Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. This is the place where we connect the dots of TV and feminism to American culture and politics. If you like what you hear, head to tvherstory.com and listen into all of our archives that are categorized to make it easier to find what you're looking for. And also while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter. Promise I'll never sell your information. Now on with the show. Hey, TV Herstoryans. I am so thrilled to finally get around to having this interview with Yvonne Perry because, you know what, it's been like, 7 years ago since we spontaneously met at LaGuardia Airport. And I was heading to Chicago, and Yvonne will tell you where she was heading to. And so we kick up this conversation, and she says, "Oh, what do you do?" And I got this podcast. And it was a much younger podcast at the time. I had no idea 8.5 years later we'd be still talking about cool stuff.
But we kept in touch. I'm proud of us.
We did. Facebook and newsletter and everything. So you may recognize Yvonne from As the World Turns, where she played Rosanna Cabot. Now, those were the years where my grandmother and my mother might have been watching As the World Turns. You were on Guiding Light, which I might have been watching. And then you've also gone on to do some other incredible things. Most importantly, you're here to talk about intimacy coordinating. We just can't wait to hear more from you. So Yvonne, welcome to Advanced TV Herstory.
I'm pleased to be here. Pleased as punch.
And I'm hopeful that you'll share a little bit about your incredible path. You are a working actor, and that's kind of a cool thing to say for decades in the business. But tell us about that path that you did, that, you ended up on As the World Turns, and you've been on Law and Order SVU, but you're also in regional theater. You are like the queen of the Greater Albany area theater.
Thank you for making me royalty.
How did it all happen?
I just have tenacity. I just don't give up. I'm relentless.
And you're Irish too, right? So I think that's part of it.
Half Irish and half Italian. It's a combination, let me tell you. I just keep showing up. It's what I teach too. So it's what I tell my students. I think it's a Woody Allen quote, 95% of life is just showing up, something like that. I don't know what the percentage is, but I sort of believe that. I mean, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. It's such a crazy business that I feel like even though I'm so much better at it now, I don't make as much money as I made in my 20s, which is random. But I do work all the time. Yeah. So I'm happy to be able to say that. And I love sharing it as a craft with my students. I really get a lot out of teaching as well.
So you are teaching explain your current assortment of gigs, what you're doing currently, in the 2020s here, and then reel us back to when you were just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you broke into As the World Turns and said, "Give me a job."
All right. How do I make this quick? I mean, I grew up in a very small town outside of Albany, New York, in upstate New York, and knew I was a good student, but knew that the thing that brought me the most joy was acting, but didn't know how to do that, how that could be a career. So I auditioned for just a couple schools, and I got into one of them. I went into a conservatory program at Adelphi University and got a BFA in acting, and then moved to New York and waitressed for a couple of years as I sort of took classes in commercials and teleprompters and all the stuff I didn't learn in college. I saved up all of my waitressing money, and 2 years after I graduated college, I went to San Francisco and studied with the American Conservatory Theater because I was thinking of going there for my master's. And everyone in San Francisco was like, "You're from New York? What did you come here for?" I was like, I had to get out of New York because I needed to focus, but had an amazing summer there. A really amazing summer that sort of grounded me in a way. They asked me into the graduate program after that summer, and I deferred for a year because I was feeling a little different, and went back to New York and started booking a lot more consistently. I got Candid Camera, and then within a year I was Rosanna on the soap. You mentioned Guiding Light. That was just a small recurring role, but met some lifelong friends on that job. I'm still in touch with Rick Hurst and Elizabeth Kiefer and some people that I met on that show. I did a play with Robert Newman, who played Josh on that show. So they're still in the CBS family. As the World Turns was on CBS. So I slogged at it in New York and ended up on daytime TV, as you know, because I had no real business connections other than like I said, my tenacity and showing up. I know that you have interviewed Katie McLean on your program, and anyone who watched World Turns knows that Katie McLean eventually played Rosanna after I left. The funny thing is that one of my first jobs in Manhattan was the casting director at All My Children asked me to audition for the role that Katie got. What was the name of her?
Dixie Cooney.
Yeah, Dixie Clooney. Okay. So that was my very first audition for daytime. Obviously, Katie was the girl for that role, but the casting director liked my work, and her name was Joan Dincheco, and she started hiring me as her reader. So although I didn't play Dixie on the show, I played Dixie in the audition room all the time. I played Dixie's sister. She had a sister named Melanie or something. I can't remember now, but I worked at All My Children for a year and a half as a reader in the casting office before I got my first day player, which was on All My Children. Frightened Young Co-ed, that was who I played. It was just really funny to me that Katie ended up playing Rosanna when that was the role that I first auditioned for in New York.
Explain for our lay listeners what a reader is for a TV series or for daytime.
In a casting office, before Zoom and COVID and everything, that was how you auditioned. You'd go into a casting director's office and you'd have a scene. And in daytime TV, the scenes tended to be pretty long back then. I'm talking now the very early 90s. And if the casting director was reading the script with you, she had her face in the paper the whole time, he or she. So they were not able to look at you, the actor auditioning. So they would hire actors like me to come in and be your scene partner, play whatever character on the show that role that they're trying to hire would eventually play opposite of. So I think once I even did a screen test, because Katie was off doing a location shoot, which they used to do before OJ and daytime started losing money. They would go on, we'd call them remotes. She was on a remote somewhere and she wasn't in the city, and they had to screen test this guy. I'm kissing 8 different guys in one day.
And you got paid.
But it was a nice way for me to learn what casting directors were looking for in the office. I've always been a sort of an experiential learner and very, very curious about every aspect of this business. So I was fascinated by it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And when I started getting more contract role auditions for daytime, I felt that much more prepared because I wasn't quite as nervous. I knew what the casting process was like.
Mm-hmm. So switching gears just a little bit to continue talking about daytime, because we have devoted hours and hours of listener time at Advanced TV Herstory to daytime. It's part of the American culture. Serial dramas are not exclusive to America, but we certainly exported them for decades and decades, particularly during those glamour 80s years. And so, yes, we've spoken with Alana Levine, who is very knowledgeable from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. 2 episodes with Katie McLean. She was gracious during COVID to talk about some of her projects as well as her various roles and just the experience of being in daytime. But I continue to wonder, and particularly someone who has been in the thick of daytime, do you think that daytime enabled an intergenerational conversation for women about our changing society? I can't say from experience that I had that conversation with either my grandma or my mother because there was so much else going on in life. But do you think that took place? Was that ever your experience in your role as Rosanna Cabot?
If you study the history of daytime television, what they used to call soaps, they called them soap operas, obviously, because they sold products targeting housewives. It was television that was designed for the woman who was home raising a family during the day. And the advertising was very much geared toward women as consumers. Daytime came around just at about the same time that our marketing and advertising agencies across the country realized, especially Madison Avenue, that the big home purchasers, the people that purchase in a household, were the women. And why weren't more of the ads and, to another extent, the programming geared toward women? That's sort of how daytimes came around. And of course, I think because of that, many of the storylines were geared toward what whoever was writing or creating these shows felt a woman would be attracted to. So there was lots of romance, lots of intrigue. Perhaps you were bored raising your family in Wichita or wherever you were. So they had this great combination of every soap had a small town. Springfield for Guiding Light, Oakdale was where we lived in As the World Turns.
Pine Valley.
So everyone knows the names of these towns. And so the characters were very involved in the communities of their towns. Often the hospitals and the police forces, because that's where drama comes from. It comes from sorrow and joy. Where do you find those things? Well, you find them in living rooms and hospitals and police stations. So it became reflective of probably more what Madison Avenue thought housewives would be attracted to. what ended up happening was soap operas. I mean, it's countless how many social and economic issues were brought up in daytime television long before they were talked about at nighttime TV. It was like they got past the censors or something. I mean, the first gay kiss, I believe, happened in daytime. The first interracial marriage happened in daytime TV. The first, there were a lot of firsts that it was a great testing the waters, I think, culturally.
And testing it while you had grandmas watching it for, they had been watching it since it was on the radio when they were watching the radio, as well as the 13-year-old who was going to watch that during spring break because we didn't take vacations back then.
And professional baseball players. Who knew it? I was, after I left the soap, I was in San Diego. I was shooting an episode of a show that was on cable called Silk Stockings. The Angels were in town playing the San Francisco team. The Giants were in town playing the Angels. I was in the same hotel that the baseball players were in. That's where production had put me up. So the hotel lobby and the hotel bar were just swarming with professional baseball players. So I walk in and they were gobsmacked by me. They were like, and I was like, why do all of these handsome young athletes know who the hell I am? Well, they told me, they said, well, we would have morning workout, morning practice, then we have a break and we all watch soaps and then we have afternoon practice. Isn't that weird?
You have a following. Yeah.
Athletes were big fans of daytime TV.
I think maybe I knew that back. People could VCR it and then you could watch it on demand and all of that. But daytime remains very fascinating. My last question, then shifting over to your time on As the World Turns, is what kind of a character was Rosanna Cabot? Were you able to sink your teeth into her? Was she like a mean girl, a mean lady, or was she kind of naive? And then when Katie got it, did they kind of transform her into a different character?
Yes and yes. I mean, at the time that I played her, Rosanna was 18 when I started. Like, the character was 18. I was in my 20s. The character was 18 and a virgin and all that stuff when I first showed up in Oakdale. And she was a good girl. She had morals and standards. She ran away from home because she grew up very, very wealthy, and she did not like the way her father used his money to control her. And she wanted to be an artist. At the beginning, she wanted to be an artist. She ended up on the Snyder farm, and she was a hard worker. My first storyline was with Hutch because I was working on the farm with him. She had never had a taste of like what real America, how they behaved, how they worked, because she was sort of born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Was it fun to play? Well, it was fun to play because I was so thrilled to be there and have a job. And I was learning so much. I think that once Carly came on the show, which was in my third year, they brought in my second or third year, Maura West came on to play my sister Carly, and she was a bad girl. She was very duplicitous, and that was hard for me. That storyline was the first real hard time I had because Roseanne had to be so stupid. It was really hard for me, as I consider myself an intelligent, well-educated person, to play someone so clueless. Now, Yvonne, now looking back, I would have enjoyed that a lot more. I would have played around with that. I would have just played that without judgment. But I was a very young actress, and I struggled mightily at the time with the Carly storyline because I wanted Rosanna to be smarter. Instead of sort of embracing the whole idea of what would it be like for a really smart person to just be completely blinded because of what they want, what she wants from Carly. But instead, I sort of fought it all the time. And I don't really talk about that much, but it was hard for me. And it's hard for me as an adult, as a grown-up actress now, looking back at my young self, and I want to say, take it easy on yourself. Enjoy the storyline.
So you've just shared this really important lesson that actors don't talk often about, this reflection. Yet you now are in the classroom, and have been for years and years and years, bringing forth the next generation of actors. Do you share that story, and do you help them with some of those insights from all of your experience?
I try to. The tricky thing about being in a classroom, and the beautiful thing about being in the classroom, because when you're an actor, your instrument is yourself, and we think about ourselves all the time because we have to use ourselves as our instrument. That can be tricky in a classroom because to be a really effective teacher, you should not talk about yourself. I try to encourage students to talk about themselves instead of me. I certainly don't want to be that teacher that just stands up there and tells stories about themselves. That said, they will ask me, how do you know that? Or, if I want to give an example of something then I certainly have enough stories from my own life that I can share. It's funny. I know we're going to get around to talking about the intimacy work that I do, but one of the reasons that I think I realized when I started directing, I was good at it intrinsically, which is what led me to search out how to get trained so that I could learn the protocols and I could get a codified language for what I was already doing, was because my introduction to that kind of situation where one is asked to do love scenes and portray intimacy in front of a camera and a crew and a larger audience, I felt very protected in daytime. Personally, this is just my story. Because daytime there was a process where they'd been doing love scenes since the 50s when they first started to record these things. So the crew was already very sensitive to it. The stage managers really took care of you. There were always robes available. The set was always cleared. You always knew the people you were working with and had long-standing relationships. You were able to build trust and camaraderie. And because it was network television, it never got too racy. It was always sort of smoke and mirrors. So we learned a lot about the smoke and mirrors aspect of it. And that was my introduction to it, which was really quite lovely, different than many more actors' experiences, which their first time doing a love scene is often really traumatic and really scary and really nerve-wracking. And because you're often with brand new people that you've just met and there's no time, and there's certainly on TV and film, there's not that rehearsal time there. When I was on As the World Turns, an actress named Ellen Dolan played Margot Hughes for 30 odd years. Margot had a rape storyline and she was so brilliant. She won a lot of awards that year. The same year that I won a soap opera award for female newcomer, she won an award as well. And it was mostly that rape storyline. And Ellen was brilliant. If you happen to have been watching World Turns, I think it was back in early 93, late 92. If you talk to Ellen about that, I want to speak for her, but I talked to her about it. And it's traumatic to watch those episodes. I mean, it was intense what Margot as a character went through. But Ellen as an actress, she was not traumatized by that at all. Not only just a wonderful actress, but also was in an environment where she felt very supported and very protected. That's one of the beautiful things about daytime and what daytime offered, not just audience members, but was there to offer the actors working in those environments.
And for the most part, overseen by some very strong women who now are no longer with us. But it strikes me that between, Claire Labine and Agnes Nixon and the Bells, they knew what they were doing when they were bringing people in to tell stories. And it's a good thing because they set a very high standard. And only now, I think we are allowing or requiring the rest of the industry to catch up.
My first on-camera kiss was with Judson Mills. So anyone who watches daytime would know that Judson played Hutch. He's gone on to have quite a wonderful career. And I first kissed him during the screen test dress rehearsal. And I remember I'd never had to do that intimate of a kiss before. I've done pecks on the cheek and stuff, but it was supposed to be it was this big long scene, and we were playing the moment where they'd been wanting to kiss each other for months and they finally kissed. That was the screen test scene. And I kissed him open mouth and I used my tongue and he did not. And I remember thinking, what a weird guy. There's this big intimate kiss and he's not even using his tongue. Like, he's kind of weird. And I didn't say anything, but Judson, bless his marvelous heart, he pulled me aside after we rehearsed that scene and he said, "Hey, Yvonne, I just want to let you know that on TV, when we kiss, especially if we don't know the person we're working with, we don't use tongue. You can open your mouth, but you don't stick your tongue down someone's throat. That's just how we do it." Which makes total sense. Because who wants to be swap and spit with someone you're not really having an intimate relationship with, right? And the camera, most of the time, cannot tell. But I didn't know. Nobody taught me that. Nobody told me. Nobody told me until Judson told me. And he told me in a beautiful, non-judgmental, completely warm and understanding way so that I was able to just go, got it. I wanted to be mortified. And for a split second I was, but he did not make me feel mortified. He was just like, "It's cool. Just wanted to let you know." And I was like, okay, got it. Won't happen again. And now when I work, because I work a lot with older high school, younger college age students, and many of them have never just been told that simple thing that can make make something like an onstage or on-screen kiss so much more approachable and relaxing to know you don't have to have that level of intimacy. So I was lucky. I was lucky at every turn when I was young. Really, I was.
Let's jump into this intimacy coordinating thing because it's something that your area of expertise and experience is now coming front and center. We are just months away from the SAG-AFTRA strike ending. And for the most part, the big headlines coming out of that strike were about artificial intelligence and that whole can of worms, which, depending upon who you're following, it's either a can that is under control or at least is, it's everybody's watching to see what's going to happen. There's no way to predict the future on artificial intelligence and what it means for both the writers and the actors who are going day in and day out, giving their very best level of creativity, original creativity, mind you. So artificial intelligence, and then also the revenue source of streaming and the control of downloads and views and traffic and all of that. Once upon a time, listeners, that's how people understood how they were going to get paid. And it was quantified, and that's what you were shown, and you got paid very well if something was a success. Now, with distribution being held by the same organization as that who funded the production, they don't really have to tell you. They don't want to tell you. They just figure they paid you for your time and good service, and that's it. And they will recoup all the profits.
Yeah, they have the information. They know how many clicks their shows are getting. They know how many subscribers they have and what percentage of those subscribers are watching what show. They have that information. We don't have Nielsen families anymore. Nielsen boxes they were pretty accurate. They would count who was watching what, and actors would get paid accordingly. But new media happened and streaming happened, and these network execs didn't want to share those numbers because they didn't want to compensate the actors or the directors or the writers. I mean, the writers went on strike first. So yeah, it's important. It's important, some of the things that were gained with this, and long overdue.
Again, Fran Drescher led the way. There were some really rocky moments. There are some people who are somewhat dissatisfied with the outcome. But in the end, the entire industry shifted, and it was a seismic shift for the writers. And the artificial intelligence question is now sort of cascading to other industries. So it's not as though it's put to bed, but at a very high visible level, Fran Drescher and her team brought forth a contract that included those two items, as well as this thing called intimacy coordinating. And the important aspect of it is that no longer will an actor who requests an intimacy coordinator be laughed at, or worse, be the target of retribution, because all of a sudden somebody is asking for a higher level of respect and support and coordination on the set.
You don't want to be labeled difficult.
There are too many other ways that we get labeled difficult, that also wondering about your own safety and your mental experience is important. So that brings us to sitting at the airport where you were heading off to or coming back from intimacy coordinating training, and take us to where we are today and what this means.
Let me just say, people who don't understand this or are confused by it, they have to remember that there was a time when actors were handed two swords in a rehearsal for Romeo and Juliet and told to just figure it out. That would never happen anymore. I was doing a play in Vermont a few years ago, and we didn't have a fight choreographer hired on the show. And the director started asking things of us, like jumps from balconies and rolls on couches. And we were game right up to a point where we all stopped and looked at each other on a break. And we went, we need to have stage combat lessons and a fight choreographer here on set. And we went to stage management and we said, we don't want to work on this scene anymore until there's someone who is here to help us do it safely. No questions asked. The next time we touched that scene, there was someone hired to choreograph the fights. Did production want to pay somebody to come in and do that initially? No, they didn't want to. They wanted to see how far they could get. They couldn't get very far because it wasn't safe. It's the same now with a love scene. This new contract, the wording is such in the new SAG-AFTRA contract that if an actor feels that they would be more comfortable and they think that the scene would be better served by having someone there to actually coordinate and or choreograph that piece of intimacy, that they have the right to ask for somebody. And at this point, we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting slowly to a place because of mostly IDC and their training program where production can find somebody to come somebody who's been trained, somebody who actually understands the verbiage and the language and the contract stuff. When I met you, I think that's where I met you. I was on my way to Illinois.
Yes.
Yes, I went to the University of Illinois. This is before IDC, which stands for Intimacy Directors and Choreographers. That's the organization now that has helped negotiate this part of the contract with SAG-AFTRA. They didn't actually exist yet. At the time, there was a fledgling organization called Intimacy Directors. It was called IDI. I'm trying to remember what it stood for. Tonya Sina helped found it. And this was the first intensive training they'd ever offered, ever. I applied and I was one of 15 people across the country that went. We went to the University of Illinois. We were there for 8 days. And all we did was take classes and choreograph scenes with each other. And it didn't matter men, women, two women. It didn't matter. It wasn't about gender. It was strictly about the choreography. And there's a little bit of trauma work involved as well. I've had actors burst into tears while I'm working with them and have to leave, and I have to go and I have to talk with them and say, what just triggered you? What's going on? I mean, these things can be triggering in my experience, especially with the younger people that I work with. Once you get a little older and you've been around the block a couple times, your skin gets a little thicker. But when you're a young actor just learning how to do this stuff, it can be difficult, especially when there are different real life sexual experiences that I'm working with. You're on a set with two 30-year-olds, chances are both of them have kissed before and probably even had sex before. And not so with some of the people that I work with, so it requires some intuition on my part sometimes to know what the questions are that I need to ask. And it's a very, very, very collaborative process with the director. Anyone who does intimacy and does it well understands that they're there to serve the story and serve the vision of the director. We just think that you should be able to do it safely and you shouldn't be traumatized because you went to work that day, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered it splendidly. Yes. Let's talk a little bit more about that training. The eight days, you were one of 15, and that was 7 years ago.
Well, it's 2018, so not quite.
6 years ago. 6 years ago this summer. Have you been doing the coordinating since? Pretty much regularly, or?
At the time, there was no pathway to certification. That's what they call it now. At the time, that didn't exist. There wasn't an organization it wasn't organized enough. My teachers were figuring out what are the classes that we need to teach in order to create a pathway to certification. We were sort of their guinea pigs working on it together. I mean, Claire Warden, who's just brilliant, and I consider her my mentor. She's done many Broadway shows, including Slave Play, which was brilliant. I don't know if you were able to see that. And I brought some of the intimacy protocols to some of the colleges that I've taught at with Claire, because really this all starts at the training level. It starts at end of high school. I'm about to go into rehearsals for a production of Spring Awakening, where all of my actors are going to be like seniors in high school. First time they've ever been asked to do this kind of work. Colleges and the places where we train our actors in this country, that's where the sea change will begin. Mm-hmm. Claire has helped me with that. She was one of my teachers in Illinois. Also, she brought all the protocols to HBO. One of my classmates now has the greatest TikTok. If you just look her up on TikTok, she gives little TikTok lessons on what we do and what barriers are used and why. And she likes to take scenes from movies and TV shows, and she'll be like, here's how they did that, how the smoke and mirrors of this all works. Jessica Steinrock is her name. She's on Instagram and TikTok under intimacy_coordinator. And she's really lovely. Concise, fun, informative videos that will teach you a lot about what intimacy coordinators and choreographers do. Actors are not sex workers, but we tell very sexy stories. She calls them spicy stories. We tell spicy stories, but we're not actually having sex with each other.
In your experience, would you say then that with this new contract that producers saw this coming and that they are okay with it?
Well, there's always resistance to everything somewhere. But I will say, hands down, the vast majority of producers and directors and actors are cheerleaders for this change. They all know that this was a long time coming. I think many, many directors were just as uncomfortable doing these scenes as the actors, but they didn't have anyone to turn to help them. I do a lot of theater intimacy work. I did a show last summer where there were two scripted scenes. One was two men and a blowjob had to happen on stage. How can we make that look real to the audience? And in another scene, two characters were going to have intercourse for the first time, and they had to disrobe, and we had to see them start to make love. So I was brought in and I was ready. My first conversation is always with my actors. Is there anything I need to know? Is there anything that will help you make this easier? But then my second conversation is always with the director. What do you want from me? How much help do you think you need? This is something Claire Warden taught me. Yvonne, talk to your director. You're there to help them. You're there to help tell the story in a way that doesn't damage people. Oftentimes, the directors I work with anyway, they're like this, you do it. And I'm like, you can tell me what the blocking is and I can just tweak. And they're like, nope. Here's where it starts. Here's where it ends. You fill in everything. I'm like, oh, okay. So they're more than happy. In fact, sometimes I get called in and they're like, it's a touch and a face stroke. And I'm like, really? You don't need me for that. So we're finding where the pendulum's going to land. I've been in more situations where I've been like, really, that's not my job. My job is to come in and help with a moment that gets spicy. But I'm not there to teach actors how to hold hands. It's when things can get dangerous. You want to have someone keeping an eye on it.
Sure. So with your experience in the theater, would you expect that to be different? Were you called in, or if you've been called in for film or TV, is it a different process in terms of some of the tactical?
Yeah, the end result is always the same. You're looking for something to be shot in a believable way. But yes, the process is a little different. The rehearsal process is different on film and TV. The crew members are different in film and television. There's different verbiage in the contracts for film and TV. I've done some short independent films, but I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe you have to be officially certified to work on network or cable film and TV. And technically, I'm not. I have most of the training, but by the time they started having a pathway to certification, I was already doing the work. And I've had most of the training. A lot of the stuff, too, is they have levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4. I would love to get some level 4 training so I could know more about TV and film contracts, but I just haven't had the time.
Well, that's what this year and next year's for, and you'll get there.
It was a little hard to get the hands-on training when nobody was doing anything.
Right. Let alone wanting intimate experiences. Those were all TV shows where everybody was on Zoom and trying to make that look like it was clever. But you've got so much experience. I'm sure it will be leveraged into a level 4.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah. Talking about intimacy coordinating, which is, if you think of TV as having been around in drama and sitcoms now for 70 years, 75 years, it's been a long time coming that now there's finally a contract that ensures that someone can raise this issue, can have somebody brought in to assist with a scene, because people have gotten hurt. I think from all the biographies I've read and the memoirs and things, that there wasn't as much respect on the set, particularly for women performers. But then, as you mentioned, 30 years ago, we were having a gay kiss, and then that drifted to primetime dramas and the dynasties of the world and everything. So there is a safety and a respect here that this person now can do a better job of ensuring.
People think there's more resistance. There really isn't any resistance to this. Everyone knows that it makes the work better. So why would you not want to have someone there to help make it go smoother and keep everyone on set happier? It's really not just about the actors. I mean, there are crew members that they see things that it's uncomfortable for them sometimes, They would like someone telling them, what's appropriate here? What's expected of me here in this moment? This work was falling on people whose job, wardrobe and stage management. They were the ones who were responsible for clearing the set and making sure that there were robes available. And nobody was asking them those questions. Or maybe they didn't know that was going to be part of their job detail when they signed up for it,
Right.
So I always feel like art comes from creative people collaborating together. And there's no reason it has to be dangerous. We can do it safely and it can still be beautiful and effective.
Would you recommend this area to someone who knows that they want to be in theater and entertainment on the production side, the back side, not performing? Would you recommend this as a side hustle or as a go all in? And it's such a young, relatively young, accredited position.
The time that I was studying most intently, I found that most of my colleagues came from stage combat and they were not actually performers. I think I was one of only 2 or 3 people in that group of 15 that was actually an actor on that side of it. Most of the majority, I should say, had already channeled their career more into stage combat, stage choreography of fight scenes, and it became a tool that they wanted in their belt. So that if they were called on set, they could also do this. Specifically, female fight stage combat people. And some people ask me, are there men that do it? And I say, yes. I met one of the most delightful men ever that he just had this, I think he was also a chiropractor, masseuse of some kind. I would totally trust him on set. So certainly there are men. But I also know that there are many times that I've been hired. I've done 3 shows at Syracuse University. They would bring me in because their fight guy was a guy. The shows that they brought me in for, they felt would be better handled by having a woman there because of the nature of the scenes and the characters involved. Although there was, I did a full frontal male nudity scene at Syracuse and it went fine. It was great. Let me tell you, these kids were so much more confident and not nervous about it because they knew that someone was there to take care of them and make sure they didn't look bad.
Which ultimately ends up with a much stronger performance and better experience for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Well, I find it fascinating, and I am grateful that the SAG-AFTRA contract managed to successfully put it in. It's going to desensationalize, I think, and just remind everybody involved that they are all professionals.
Yeah.
And that it's finally in somebody's position description, as opposed to, as you said, the wardrobe person who just didn't really realize that that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to end this on a fun note that I didn't share with you in the memo I sent, and that is to kind of put you back into your formative acting years. And what were your top TV shows growing up? That was me. I saw me. I wanted to do that.
Well, I grew up in the 70s, the late 70s, and I loved the Donnie and Marie show. That was the kind of show that was on a lot. Those, what do you call those kinds of shows?
Variety shows?
Variety shows, yeah. So I love to watch that show just because they seem so happy all the time. But my favorite variety show was for sure the Carol Burnett show. It was my dream to be on the Carol Burnett show, to just do that kind of sketch comedy, that kind of improv. They were cracking each other up all the time. And also fully committed to the characters that they were playing. And I thought, I remember thinking, how do I get to do that? And then, after I started studying it, then my dream sort of became to be on a sitcom because it combined both things. You got to have a live audience and you got to perform live and have immediate instant gratification from that audience to know if something was working or not working. Yet you were working technically with cameras, and I liked that too. I'm really enamored of the whole technical part of this business. So, and certainly when you're in daytime and you're working so fast, you have to be working in collaboration with your crew or you just won't get it done. But what TV shows did I watch? I mean, I have to tell you honestly, I grew up under a mountain, which wasn't a very big mountain, but it was big enough that we only got 2 networks and PBS. So when I grew up, I got CBS, ABC, and PBS. We didn't get NBC, and we didn't have cable. I was in the country, so there was no cable there. And I was also one of 6 kids, and I did not have control of the television very often. So I read a lot of books. There's only so many times you can watch Starsky and Hutch, where you're like, yeah, which I did watch a lot of. And Happy Days, and Laverne and Shirley, and those were the shows that I was older, I had a lot of younger siblings. So if we were watching TV, it had to be something that everybody could enjoy together.
Sure.
Now everybody's got a TV on their computer everywhere in every room of the house.
Yes. And they don't even have to be in the house. They can be sitting, at their sibling's soccer game, and there they are watching a TV show instead. But,
yeah,
it is just that sort of formative experience, at least for people from our generation and older. And there will be some who say that girl or Mary Tyler Moore or Buffy.
No, I watch Mary Tyler Moore now. I'll go back and I'll watch it on YouTube just because I think it's fascinating and brilliant. She's so beautiful. She was responsible for this is Mary Tyler Moore I'm talking about, for changing. She wore pants when she was on the Dick Van Dyke Show. She wore those capri pants and she just made it okay. She was a groundbreaker in so many ways. She was brilliant.
I will watch it too. Listeners, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but between the comedic timing and chops of Mary and Cloris Leachman and Valerie Harper and Betty White, who by then in the mid 70s had already been on TV for 25 years off and on. And I am seated in my basement about 4 city blocks from where Mary is walking in the credits.
And throws her hat up?
No, that's in downtown Minneapolis. But when she's walking and feeding the ducks and doing all that lake stuff. Yeah, that's a lake that's really close to where we live now.
That's great.
All right. And then moving on to your website and your social media handles, because you are sharing cool stuff all the time, particularly of your many shows and projects that you have going on.
I'm on Facebook all the time as Yvonne Perry. I also am on Instagram. I do post about things I do. Don't go to my website right now. I do have one, YvonnePerry.com, but I'm going to be redoing my website again this spring.
Good. All right. Wrapping things up. Thank you very much for doing this today. Advanced TV Herstory is here to connect the dots of TV and feminism with American culture and politics. And nothing has moved faster with the help of TV and film than sort of the understanding of what we see on TV that is of a sexual nature, both in a positive and loving way, as well as sexual violence. And there are real people who are telling those stories for us to see. And it's important that we understand that now they will be respected and valued in creating that. And you are very much a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, let us know what you think about this episode with Yvonne Perry, talking about the backside of TV production, including intimacy coordinating. Also, head over to tvherstory.com where you can subscribe to our newsletter. Your information will not be sold, but it does contain information and fun insights that otherwise are not shared on social media these days. Many thanks to Mary Lou Morose for all of her work doing the audio editing, bringing Yvonne's voice and mine together for this important conversation, as well as video editor Nivea Lopez. Head over to YouTube from here going forward to see more video of Advanced TV Herstory. Lastly, our jingle is Jazzers Take Me Higher, which can be found at freemusicarchive.org. Thank you so much for listening. You really are why I podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.